That ring should have killed you the moment you touched it. The voice did not rise, yet it cut through the air like winter steel, and every single person in the room stopped breathing at once. Emily Carter froze with her hand still hovering over the table, her fingertips tingling as if she had just brushed against a live wire. Except there were no wires here, only crystal glasses, velvet chairs, and guests who were far too still to be normal. A second ago, she had been nothing more than a waitress trying not to get fired, balancing a tray of drinks that cost more than her weekly rent. Now, the temperature had dropped so sharply she could see her own breath, and the faint golden glow pulsing beneath her skin was not something she could explain away as nerves. She swallowed hard, her heart slamming against her ribs, and slowly looked down at the object she had touched. The ring sat where it had always been, heavy, dark, ancient, but something about it had changed. Or maybe something about her had. Before continuing, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you cannot miss. The music had stopped without anyone telling it to. Conversations had died mid-sentence. Even the clinking of glasses had vanished, leaving behind a silence so thick it pressed against her ears. Emily did not understand what was happening, but she understood one thing clearly. Every eye in the room was on her. Not curious, not annoyed, afraid. The kind of fear she had only ever seen once before, when a stray dog had wandered into traffic, and everyone knew what was about to happen, but no one could stop it. Her fingers twitched, and the moment they moved, the ring responded. Heat surged up her arm, sharp and sudden, forcing a soft gasp from her lips. The glow beneath her skin brightened, tracing a pattern along her wrist that had not been there before. It felt wrong. Too precise. Too intentional. As if something ancient had just recognized her. A chair scraped loudly across the marble floor, and that was when the illusion of normal life shattered completely. One of the guests stood abruptly, his face pale in a way that had nothing to do with lighting. "That is not possible," whispered, though the whisper carried across the entire room. Another voice followed, colder, trembling despite the effort to hide it. "The crown ring does not answer to humans." Emily's breath caught. Crown, ring. The words meant nothing to her, yet they settled into her chest with a weight she could not explain. She had not meant to touch it. It had simply been there, left carelessly on the table like any other piece of jewelry. She had only reached out to move it aside, to do her job, to avoid getting yelled at again. But now the air itself felt charged, alive with something watching, something waiting. And then she felt it, a presence behind her. Not footsteps, not movement, just a sudden awareness, like the moment before a storm breaks. The hairs on the back of her neck rose as a shadow fell across her, tall and still and impossible to ignore. She did not need to turn around to know who it was. The entire room shifted toward him without a single word being spoken. Power did not announce itself. It simply existed. Her pulse stuttered. The glow on her wrist pulsed once more, brighter this time, and somewhere deep inside her chest, something answered it. Not fear. Not exactly. Recognition. And that was far more terrifying. Emily did not move. Not when the air tightened. Not when every gaze locked onto her, like she had just stepped into the center of something forbidden. Her hand still hovered inches above the table, but the warmth spreading beneath her skin refused to fade. It pulsed instead. Slow. Deliberate. Alive. The glow along her wrist sharpened, lines forming with unnatural precision, curling into a pattern that looked older than anything in that room. She sucked in a breath, shallow and unsteady, trying to understand what her own body was doing, but nothing about this made sense. She had never seen that symbol before. She knew that. She would remember something like that. And yet, as she stared at it, a strange certainty settled deep inside her chest. It was not unfamiliar. It was returning. A low sound broke the silence. Not loud, not sudden, but enough to fracture the fragile stillness that held the room together. Someone stepped back, then another. Chairs shifted. Fabric whispered. The distance between Emily and the nearest guest widened, as if an invisible line had been drawn around her. No one wanted to cross it. No one dared. The ring sat untouched on the table, but no longer felt like an object. It felt like a presence. Watching, waiting, responding. Emily swallowed again, her throat dry. She wanted to pull her hand back, to pretend none of this had happened, to go back to carrying trays and avoiding eye contact, but her body would not listen. The warmth surged again, stronger this time, and her fingers trembled. A faint echo brushed the edge of her mind. Not a voice, not words, something older, a memory that was not hers. Stone walls, flickering firelight, a crown resting on a dark surface, and a hand, her hand, wearing that ring. Emily gasped softly and jerked backward, the vision snapping away like it had never been there. The glow dimmed for half a second. Then it flared again, brighter than before. A sharp crack split the air. One of the crystal glasses on the table fractured from the pressure, a thin line racing across its surface before it shattered completely. No one reacted to the broken glass. No one even looked at it. Their attention remained fixed on her, on the mark forming beneath her skin, on the impossible thing that should not exist. She is still alive, someone said quietly, disbelief threading through every word. That is not possible. Another voice answered, colder, more controlled, but no less shaken. The ring does not tolerate imposters. Emily's pulse stumbled. Imposters. The word hit harder than anything else. She did not know what they were talking about, but she knew one thing with absolute clarity. They thought she should be dead. The realization sent a chill racing down her spine, cutting through the unnatural warmth in her arm. Her gaze flickered back to the ring, then to the mark, then to the empty space in front of her where nothing should have changed, and yet everything had. A presence moved behind her again. Closer now. Not just a shadow. A force. The kind that bent the room around it without effort. The whispers died instantly. The tension snapped into something sharper. He did not rush. He did not need to. Every step carried weight, quiet but absolute, each one landing with a certainty that made the air feel heavier. Emily felt it before she saw him. The shift. The gravity. The way every instinct in her body screamed at her to turn around and run, even though she knew running would be useless. Her fingers curled slightly, the glow reacting again, answering something unseen. Then his voice came, low and controlled, but edged with something darker beneath the surface. Look at me. It was not loud. It did not need to be. The command settled into her bones, impossible to ignore. Emily hesitated for the smallest fraction of a second. Then she turned. Lucien Voss stood only a few feet away, impossibly still, his presence swallowing the space around him. Up close, he was worse than she expected. Not just powerful, not just dangerous. Something older, something that had seen centuries and survived them all. His eyes dropped immediately to her wrist. The moment he saw the mark, something shifted in his expression. Not shock, not exactly. Recognition, the kind that cut deeper than fear. He moved before she could react. One step, then another, closing the distance like it had never existed. His hand came up and closed around her wrist, firm but not crushing, his fingers cold against the heat of her skin. The contact sent a shock through her body, sharp and immediate, and the mark beneath her skin flared in response, brighter than ever before. Emily's breath caught. The world narrowed to that single point of contact. His grip tightened slightly, not in anger, but in certainty, as if he needed to confirm something he could not yet believe. His gaze lifted from the mark to her face, and for the first time, she saw something crack beneath the control. Not weakness, not doubt, something far more dangerous. That mark, he said slowly, each word measured, deliberate. It answers to blood. The room seemed to hold its breath again. Emily felt her own pulse echo in her ears, loud and unsteady, as the weight of his words settled over her. Blood. She did not understand what that meant. She did not understand any of this. But the way he was looking at her made one thing painfully clear. This was no accident. And whatever she had just triggered, there was no going back. The moment his fingers tightened around her wrist, the entire room shifted from fear into something sharper, more dangerous, like a blade being drawn in silence. Emily could feel it the way the air pressed against her lungs, in a way no one dared to move, not even to breathe too loudly. The glow beneath her skin did not fade under his grip. It intensified. The lines burned brighter, threading across her wrist with precise elegance, as if they had been waiting for this exact contact. Lucien Voss did not look away. His eyes remained fixed on the mark, studying it with a focus that made everything else in the room irrelevant. It should not be reacting like this, a voice said from somewhere behind them, tight with controlled alarm. My lord, you need to release her. No one stepped forward. No one tried to intervene. They knew better. Emily felt his grip shift slightly, not loosening, but adjusting, as if he was testing something. The moment his thumb brushed the center of the glowing pattern, a sharp pulse shot through her arm and into her chest. Her breath hitched. The world tilted for a fraction of a second, and then something impossible happened. He reacted, not outwardly, not in a way anyone else in the room would notice. But Emily felt it, the smallest tightening of his fingers, the almost imperceptible pause in his breathing, as if he had felt it too. The connection snapped between them like a live current, invisible but undeniable. Emily's heart pounded harder. What did you just do? He asked quietly, his voice lower now, stripped of its earlier command and replaced with something far more controlled, far more dangerous. She shook her head, the motion small, uncertain. I did not do anything, she said, her voice barely steady. I just touched it. The words sounded weak even to her own ears, but they were the truth. She had no explanation beyond that. Around them, the tension tightened further. One of the older guests stepped forward just enough to be seen, his expression carved from centuries of discipline. That is impossible, he said. The crown ring does not awaken for chance contact. It responds only to lineage. The word settled into the silence like a verdict. Lineage. Emily's stomach dropped. Lucien's gaze lifted from her wrist to her face again, slower this time, more deliberate. He searched her expression as if looking for something hidden beneath the surface. Something she herself did not know existed. Lineage. He repeated, softer, as if testing the word. Against her. Emily felt the weight of it press down on her, heavy and suffocating. I'm not who you think I am, she said quickly, the words rushing out before she could stop them. I'm just a waitress. I do not belong here. For a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes. Not belief, not dismissal, something else. Calculation. Then the mark pulsed again. Stronger, brighter. The glow surged up her arm in a sudden wave, forcing a sharp gasp from her lips as her knees nearly gave out beneath her. Lucien's grip tightened instantly, steadying her before she could fall, his reaction automatic, controlled. The contact deepened the effect. The room seemed to dim at the edges, her vision narrowing as another flash of something not her own tore through her mind. Stone corridors, a throne carved from dark marble, a voice speaking words she could not understand, yet somehow felt burned into her bones. Emily staggered, her free hand gripping the edge of the table to stay upright. The vision shattered as quickly as it came, leaving her breathless and disoriented. She is unstable, someone said sharply. My lord, this is dangerous. If the ring has chosen incorrectly, it will destroy her. Lucien did not move. He did not release her. His gaze remained locked on her face, searching, measuring, deciding. Then, slowly, he turned his head just enough to address the room without looking away from her. The ring does not make mistakes, he said. The statement landed with finality. No argument followed. No one dared. Emily's pulse roared in her ears, the words echoing louder than anything else. The ring does not make mistakes. If that was true, then what did that make her? The question settled into her chest, heavy and unavoidable. Lucien's fingers loosened just slightly, not releasing her, but easing enough for her to breathe again. His voice dropped even lower, meant only for her this time. You say you are nothing, he said, each word deliberate, and yet you are standing here alive. His gaze flickered briefly to the mark, then back to her eyes. That alone makes you something far more dangerous than you understand. The silence did not hold. It fractured, not loudly, not suddenly, but with a subtle shift of power that rippled through the room like a warning no one could ignore. Emily felt it before. She understood it. The tension changed. It sharpened. What had been fear was turning into something colder. Calculation. Threat. Her wrist still rested in Lucian's grasp. The glow beneath her skin steady now, no longer flickering but alive in a quiet, controlled pulse. That should have comforted her. It did not, because the others had noticed. My lord. A woman's voice cut through the stillness, smooth and controlled, but edged with unmistakable authority. You know what this means. Emily's gaze shifted slightly, enough to catch sight of the speaker. The woman stood near the center of the room, elegant, composed, her posture flawless, her expression untouched by panic. But her eyes were fixed on Emily with a precision that felt like a blade. If the ring has chosen, the woman continued, then the claim must be verified. Immediately, a murmur followed. Not loud, not chaotic, controlled, disciplined. But beneath it, something darker moved. Agreement. Anticipation. Emily's stomach tightened. Claim. Verified. The words did not belong in her world. She did not understand them, but she understood the tone. This was not curiosity anymore. This was judgment. Lucian did not release her. His grip remained steady, grounding and unyielding at the same time. When he spoke, his voice cut clean through the rising tension. No one moves. The command landed like stone. The murmurs stopped instantly. The woman inclined her head slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. With respect, she said, her voice unchanged, this is no longer a private matter. The crown ring has awakened in the presence of witnesses. The council will not ignore it. The word council seemed to shift something deeper in the room. Emily felt it in the way several figures straightened, in the way the air grew heavier. Lucian's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes darkened. The council does not dictate what happens under my authority, he replied. Quiet. Absolute. The woman held his gaze for a moment longer, then spoke again, slower this time. And yet, if she is not who the ring claims she is, the consequences will not be contained to this room. Emily's pulse spiked. Not who the ring claims she is. The phrase echoed in her mind, louder than anything else. She wanted to speak, to deny it, to say they were all wrong. But the words would not come, because a small, growing part of her was no longer certain. The mark on her wrist pulsed again, as if responding to the tension, to the attention, to the unspoken challenge hanging in the air. Lucian felt it. She knew he did. His fingers tightened slightly, not enough to hurt, but enough to remind her that he was still there, still in control. His gaze flickered briefly to the woman, then back to Emily, as if measuring two opposing forces at once. Then, without warning, another voice entered the conversation. Older, sharper. If the ring has chosen incorrectly, it will purge the error, the voice said. Publicly. Emily's breath caught. Publicly. The word hit harder than anything else. This was not just about her anymore. This was about spectacle, about proof, about power. Lucian's expression hardened, the faintest shift, but enough to change the entire atmosphere around him. The room seemed to lean away from that change instinctively. There will be no purge, he said. The words were not raised. They did not need to be. But this time, the response was not immediate silence. The tension pushed back, not openly, not recklessly, but it was there. The woman spoke again, softer now, but far more dangerous. Then you're choosing her over the law. Emily felt the words like a physical weight. Choosing her. That was not possible. He did not know her. He had no reason to. And yet he had not let go. Not once. Lucian's gaze did not leave Emily as he answered. I'm choosing what the ring has already decided. The statement landed differently. Heavier. Final. Emily's chest tightened, her thoughts spiraling as the implications sank in. The ring chose. And now he was standing behind that choice. The room did not relax. If anything, the pressure increased. Lines were being drawn, silently, invisibly but undeniably. Emily could feel it in every glance, every still figure watching her like she had just become something dangerous, something that did not belong, something that needed to be tested or removed. The mark on her wrist pulsed again, slower this time, deeper, as if settling into place, as if claiming her fully. And for the first time since this had started, Emily realized something that made her blood run cold. This was not a mistake that would be corrected. This was a decision that would change everything. The shift happened slowly, but it was unmistakable. The room was no longer watching her with curiosity or even suspicion. It was watching her like a threat that needed to be understood before it could be controlled. Emily felt it in every glance that lingered too long, in every still figure that had not moved since Lucian spoke. The mark on her wrist pulsed again beneath his grip, no longer erratic, no longer reacting blindly. It was steady now, intentional, as if it had accepted something, or claimed it. Her breathing grew shallow, each inhale tight against the weight pressing in from all sides. She wanted to pull away, to step back, to break whatever invisible line had formed around her. But Lucian's hand remained firm around her wrist, anchoring her in place, refusing to let the moment dissolve into something easier. "It is stabilizing," someone said quietly from the edge of the room. The observation cut through the tension with surgical precision. "That should not be possible without blood confirmation." Another voice followed, colder, more analytical. "Unless the bond has already recognized her." Bond. The word settled heavier than the rest. Emily's pulse stumbled, her gaze flickering down to the mark again. It did not look like something foreign anymore. It did not feel like an attack. It felt connected. The realization sent a ripple of unease through her chest. She did not understand how that could be true. She did not want it to be true. Lucian's thumb shifted slightly against her skin, brushing the edge of the glowing pattern again. This time, the reaction was different. Not sharp, not violent. The warmth deepened, spreading slowly up her arm, settling in her chest like a second heartbeat syncing with her own. His grip tightened just enough to confirm what he was feeling. "It is not rejecting her," he said, his voice low, almost to himself. The words carried anyway. They always did. The reaction was immediate. The quiet control in the room cracked just enough for the truth beneath it to surface. "Then it has accepted her," the older voice said again, sharper now. "Which means she either carries the bloodline or she's something far worse." Emily's breath caught. Far worse. The phrase echoed in her mind, louder than anything else. She did not feel powerful. She did not feel dangerous. She felt trapped. And yet, the mark on her wrist continued to glow as if it disagreed, as if it knew something she did not. The woman from before stepped forward again, this time closing some of the distance, though not enough to challenge Lucian directly. Her eyes remained fixed on Emily, unwavering, calculating. "If the bond has formed," she said, her voice smooth but edged with steel, "then it will respond to a direct call." The room went still again, not frozen this time, focused, anticipating. Emily felt the shift immediately. The attention sharpened, narrowing onto her like a blade being drawn across a map. "Do it," the woman said. The command was not directed at Emily. It was directed at Lucian. A test. A challenge. Lucian did not respond immediately. His gaze remained on Emily, searching her face, as if weighing something far beyond what anyone else in the room could see. Then, slowly, his fingers adjusted on her wrist, not releasing, but repositioning, aligning his hand more deliberately over the mark. Emily's heart began to race again. "What are you doing?" she whispered, the question barely audible, but he heard it. Of course he did. His eyes flickered to hers, and for a brief moment, the intensity there shifted. Not softened, but focused. "If the bond is real," he said quietly, "it will answer me." The words sent a cold wave through her chest. Answer him. She did not know what that meant. She did not know what would happen. But every instinct she had told her that whatever came next would change things in a way she could not undo. The room held its breath again. Lucian's thumb pressed directly over the center of the mark. Then, without raising his voice, without any visible strain, he spoke. "Answer." The command did not echo. It did not need to. It settled into the air like something ancient recognizing its own language. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then the mark exploded with light. Not outward, not blinding, but deep. The glow surged beneath her skin, racing up her arm, across her collarbone, threading into her chest with terrifying precision. Emily gasped as the force of it hit her, her knees buckling slightly before Lucian steadied her again. The connection snapped into place. Clear, undeniable. The warmth became heat. The heat became something else entirely. Recognition, not just from the ring, from her. Images flashed again, faster this time, sharper, impossible to ignore. A throne, a crown, a hand lifting that very ring. Her hand. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the visions collided with reality, overlapping in a way that made the world feel unstable. The glow settled again, slower now, deeper, as if locking into place. The room did not erupt. It did not panic. It went silent in a way that felt final. Because everyone understood what had just happened. Lucian's hand remained on her wrist, but his grip had changed. Not testing anymore. Confirming. His voice, when he spoke again, was quieter than before. More dangerous. It answered. And this time no one argued. The silence that followed his words did not break. It deepened. It settled into something heavier, something final, as if the entire room had just witnessed a truth none of them had wanted confirmed. Emily's breath came uneven now, her chest rising and falling too fast as the last traces of the glow faded into a steady warmth beneath her skin. It did not disappear. It stayed, quiet, certain, alive. Lucian's hand remained wrapped around her wrist, but there was no longer any force in it. No testing, no hesitation, only certainty. That was what terrified her the most, because she could feel it in him. He believed what had just happened. He believed it completely. No. The woman's voice cut in again, sharper this time, the calm control cracking just enough to reveal something underneath it. That is not enough. The room shifted slightly, not in agreement, but in attention. The challenge had been made. Emily's gaze flickered toward the woman, catching the intensity in her expression now. It was no longer just calculation. It was resistance. A reaction does not prove identity, the woman continued. It proves compatibility. There is a difference. The words settled into the air like a blade sliding into place. Compatibility, not identity. Emily felt her stomach twist. That sounded worse. That sounded like something unstable, something that could be undone. Lucian did not release her. His eyes remained on her face, but something colder moved beneath the surface now. Something that had not been there before. You doubt the ring, he said quietly. The woman held his gaze without flinching. I doubt coincidence, she replied, and I do not believe in miracles that favor humans. The word humans carried weight. Disdain, suspicion, history. Emily felt it land on her like a mark separate from the one glowing beneath her skin. She swallowed, her throat tight, her thoughts spinning faster than she could control. She did not belong here. She knew that. Every instinct she had screamed it. But the mark on her wrist pulsed once, slow and steady, as if answering a different truth entirely. A deeper one she did not understand. Then we removed doubt, the older voice from before said, stepping forward just enough to enter the circle of attention. His presence was colder than the others, older, sharpened by time into something precise and dangerous. The ring answered. Now we test the blood. Emily's breath stopped. Test the blood. The phrase echoed in her mind, louder than anything else. She did not need to understand their world to know what that meant. Her fingers twitched instinctively, but Lucian's grip tightened just enough to stop her from pulling away. Not harsh, not painful, but firm, grounding. No, Lucian said. The refusal came immediately. Absolute. The older figure's gaze sharpened. If she carries the bloodline, then the ritual will confirm it, he said. If she does not, the ring will purge the error. Either way, we restore order. Restore order. Emily felt the words like a sentence already passed. She was not part of their order. She was the disruption, the mistake, the thing that needed to be corrected. The mark pulsed again, reacting to the tension, the threat, the rising pressure in the room. This time, the warmth spread further, deeper in her chest, wrapping around her ribs like something protective. Something aware. Lucian felt it. She knew he did. His eyes flickered to the mark, then back to her face, sharper now, more focused. "There will be no ritual tonight," he said, his voice lower than before, but carrying more weight than anything else in the room. The older figure did not step back. "Then you are delaying the inevitable," he replied, "and risking instability we cannot contain." The tension snapped tighter, not breaking, but close. Emily could feel it in the way the air seemed to press inward, in the way every figure in the room was waiting for something to give, for someone to push too far. Lucian's grip shifted again, and this time it was different. Not restraint, not control, possession. His hand moved, slightly, positioning her at his side, rather than in front of him, a subtle movement that changed everything. It was no longer just contact. It was alignment. Protection. The message was clear. She was under his authority now. "You speak of containment," Lucian said slowly, his gaze sweeping across the room for the first time since this began. "Yet none of you have considered the alternative." The words drew attention instantly. Even the woman went still, her focus sharpening further. "If the ring has chosen correctly," Lucian continued, "then what stands here is not an error." He paused, just long enough for the weight of the moment to settle. Then his gaze returned to Emily, steady, unyielding. "It is a claim." The word landed harder than anything else had. Claim, not possibility, not theory, something binding, something that could not be undone. The room did not react immediately, because they understood. If he was right, then everything had just changed. And Emily, standing there with a glowing mark beneath her skin and no understanding of what she had become, felt the full weight of that change settle over her like a shadow she could not escape. The word claim did not fade. It echoed, not in sound, but in consequence. Emily felt it settle into the room like something alive, something that shifted every invisible boundary at once. The reaction was not immediate chaos. It was worse, controlled fracture. Lines that had once been fixed were now moving, silently, dangerously, as every figure in the room recalculated their position. She could feel it in the way their attention sharpened, in the way their stillness became deliberate rather than restrained. This was no longer about whether she belonged. It was about what she represented. Lucian's hand remained steady at her side, anchoring her in place, but the atmosphere around him had changed. There was no hesitation left in him now. No uncertainty, only decision. The woman's expression tightened, not in panic, but in something colder. Resolve. "A claim without proof is a risk," she said, her voice quieter now, but far more dangerous. And risks of this scale do not remain contained. The older figure beside her inclined his head slightly, his gaze never leaving Emily. "If what you say is true," he added, "then she is not merely a claimant. She is a catalyst." Catalyst. The word settled into Emily's chest with unsettling weight. She did not know what she was catalyzing. She did not want to find out. The mark on her wrist pulsed again, deeper this time, slower, as if responding not to fear, but to something far more deliberate. Recognition. The woman took another step forward. This time, no one stopped her. Not because they could not, because they wanted to see what would happen. "Then let us ask the simpler question," she said, her gaze locking onto Emily with surgical precision. "If she carries royal blood, where has she been?" The silence that followed was sharper than anything before it. Emily felt it hit her directly, the weight of that question pressing down on her chest. Where had she been? Working double shifts, counting tips, trying to survive. The answer felt absurd in this room. Impossible. She swallowed, her throat tight, her voice barely steady as she spoke. "I have been working," she said. The words sounded small, fragile. "I have been trying to pay rent." A flicker passed through the room. Not sympathy, something closer to disbelief. Or disdain. The woman's expression did not change. "Royal blood does not disappear into obscurity," she replied. "It is tracked, protected, eliminated if necessary." The final word landed harder than the rest. Eliminated. Emily's pulse spiked, her fingers curling slightly at her sides as the reality of what they were saying closed in around her. She was not supposed to exist in their world. And if she did, it meant something had gone wrong. Something that needed to be corrected. Lucian's grip shifted again, subtle but unmistakable. His hand moved slightly forward, placing himself more clearly between Emily and the rest of the room. It was not a defensive movement. It was a declaration. The space around them adjusted instantly. No one crossed it. You assume absence means weakness, Lucian said, his voice calm, but edged with something that made the temperature drop another degree. History has proven otherwise. The woman held his gaze, unflinching. History has also proven that hidden bloodlines create instability, she countered. Wars have begun over less. The word war, Emily felt the weight of that realization settle over her like a crushing pressure. She had not asked for this. She did not understand it. And yet it was happening anyway. The mark on her wrist pulsed again, stronger this time, as if reacting to the rising tension. The warmth spread into her chest, steady and unyielding, anchoring her in a way that felt almost intentional, almost protective. Lucian felt it. His eyes flickered to the mark briefly, then back to the room, sharper now, more decisive. Then we will not allow instability, he said. The statement was simple, final. The older figure's gaze narrowed slightly. And how do you propose to prevent it, he asked. Lucian did not hesitate. By removing the question. The room stilled again, the tension coiling tighter as every gaze locked onto him. Emily's breath caught, her pulse racing as she felt the shift before he even spoke the words. His hand tightened just slightly at her side, grounding her, steadying her, claiming the space around her completely. Then he said it. She comes with me. The words landed like a strike. Immediate, unavoidable. The reaction was instant. Not loud, not chaotic, but sharp, focused. Resistance rising beneath the surface. You would take her into your domain without verification, the woman said, her voice lower now, more dangerous than before. You would isolate the variable rather than test it. Lucian's gaze did not waver. I would protect what the ring has already chosen, he replied. The word protect shifted everything again. Emily felt it in the way the room reacted, in the way the tension sharpened into something closer to conflict. This was no longer just debate. This was opposition. Lines had been drawn, and she was standing at the center of them. The mark on her wrist pulsed once more, slow and deliberate, as if acknowledging the decision already made. And for the first time since this began, Emily realized something that made her breath catch in her throat. She was not just being tested. She was being taken. The moment the words left Lucian's mouth, the balance of the room broke. Not into chaos, into opposition. It was subtle at first, almost invisible to anyone who did not understand power, but Emily felt it instantly. The air changed. The stillness sharpened into something edged, something ready. This was no longer a room observing, an anomaly. This was a room deciding whether to allow it to leave. Lucian's hand remained steady at her side, but his presence expanded, filling the space around them in a way that made it clear he had already moved past discussion. The decision had been made. The consequences would follow. You do not remove a variable, the older figure said, his voice quieter now, but carrying far more weight than before. You contain it. The word contain landed like a boundary being drawn. Emily's chest tightened. She did not like the way that sounded. Not all. She's not a variable, Lucian replied. The correction was immediate. Controlled. Absolute. She is under my authority. The shift that followed those words was immediate and unmistakable. Authority was not a suggestion in this room. It was law, and he had just placed her directly beneath it. The woman's gaze sharpened further, her composure still intact, but the tension beneath it now undeniable. Authority can be challenged, she said, especially when it threatens stability. Emily felt the pressure rise again, thicker now, closer to breaking. Every instinct she had told her to step back, to pull away from the center of this, but Lucian's presence anchored her in place, holding the line around her without effort. He did not move. He did not need to. Then challenge it, he said. The invitation was quiet, deadly. The room did not erupt. It constricted. Every figure present understood exactly what those words meant. This was no longer about her alone. This was about him, about whether anyone in that room was willing to stand against him directly. No one stepped forward. Not yet. But the resistance did not disappear. It shifted. It adapted. If she leaves with you, the woman said slowly, choosing each word with precision, then the council will interpret that as concealment. Concealment. The accusation hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. You would be removing evidence from public verification. Emily's pulse spiked. Evidence. That was what she was to them now. Not a person. Not even a threat. Something to be examined. Proved. Controlled. The mark on her wrist pulsed again, reacting to the rising tension, the growing pressure of expectation and opposition. The warmth spread deeper, anchoring her again, steadying her in a way that felt almost deliberate, as if something within her refused to let her break. Under the weight of it, Lucian felt it. She knew he did. His gaze flickered briefly to the mark, then back to the room, sharper now, colder. The council will interpret what I allow it to interpret, he said. The statement was not defensive. It was not reactive. It was a fact. The older figure's eyes narrowed slightly. That may be true, he said, but perception shapes allegiance, and allegiance shapes power. The warning was clear. This was bigger than the room, bigger than the moment. Taking her would not end this. It would escalate it. Emily felt the truth of that settle into her chest, heavy and unavoidable. She did not understand their world, but she understood tension, and this felt like the beginning of something far worse. Lucian's hand shifted again, this time more deliberately. He stepped slightly forward, placing himself fully between her and the others, not blocking her view, but redefining the space around her entirely. The message was unmistakable. If anyone wanted to reach her, they would go through him. Then let them watch, he said. The words landed clean. Final. No room for interpretation. The woman's gaze held his for a long moment, measuring, calculating, searching for weakness. She found none. The tension stretched. Tight. Fragile. Then, slowly, she inclined her head. Not submission. Not agreement. A temporary acceptance. Very well, she said. But understand this. Her eyes shifted to Emily for a fraction of a second, sharp and unyielding. If she destabilizes what has been built, the response will not be contained. The warning settled into the room like a shadow. Emily felt it wrap around her, cold and inescapable. Lucian did not respond to the threat. He did not need to. Instead, he turned slightly, his grip guiding her forward for the first time since this began. The movement was subtle, controlled, but it changed everything. She was no longer standing still. She was leaving. The room parted without being told, not out of respect, out of recognition, of what he was, of what he had decided. Emily's steps felt unsteady at first, her mind racing, her body still trying to catch up to everything that had just happened. The mark on her wrist pulsed again, steady, grounded, as if guiding her forward whether she understood it or not. As they moved, she could feel the weight of every gaze on her. Back, not fading, not softening, following, measuring, waiting. The doors ahead opened before they reached them, silent and precise, revealing the darker corridor beyond. The moment she crossed that threshold, something shifted again. Not in the room behind her. In her. The warmth in her chest deepened, settling into something quieter. Something more certain. She did not know where she was going. She did not know what she had become. But one thing was clear now in a way it had not been before. There was no returning to the life she had just left behind. And whatever waited for her on the other side of those doors, it was already beginning to claim her. The corridor swallowed the noise behind them the moment the doors closed. What had been a room filled with controlled tension faded into silence, so complete it felt unnatural. Emily's footsteps echoed softly against the polished floor, each step sounding louder than it should, as if the space itself was listening. The warmth beneath her skin had not faded. If anything, it had settled deeper, no longer flaring, no longer reacting, but present in a way that made it impossible to ignore. Lucian did not release her. His hand remained at her wrist, guiding without force, steady without hesitation. The grip had changed again. It was no longer about control. It was about direction. The corridor stretched ahead of them, long and dim, lined with dark stone and low golden light that did not flicker like normal fire. It glowed steadily, casting shadows that did not quite move the way shadows should. Emily swallowed, her gaze flickering to the walls, then forward again. This place did not feel like the world she knew. It felt older, quieter, as if it had been waiting long before she ever stepped into it. "You are breathing too fast," Lucian said without looking at her. His voice was lower now, quieter but no less precise. Emily blinked, caught off guard by the observation. "I'm trying to keep up," she replied, her voice still tight. It came out more defensive than she intended. He did not respond immediately. His pace did not change. After a moment, his grip shifted slightly, not tightening, but adjusting in a way that slowed her just enough to match his stride. The effect was immediate. Her breathing steadied without her meaning it to. The silence returned. Not empty. Controlled. Emily glanced at him, just for a second, studying the sharp lines of his profile, the stillness in his expression. Up close, away from the room, he looked even less human. Not in appearance. In presence. There was no wasted movement in him. No hesitation. No uncertainty. And yet beneath that control, something had shifted. She could feel it. Not through words. Through the connection still lingering where his hand touched her skin. The mark pulsed once, slow and quiet, as if acknowledging that connection. Emily looked down at it again, her breath catching slightly as the faint glow remained, steady beneath the surface. "What is this?" she asked finally. The question came out softer than she expected. Not demanding, not accusing, just uncertain. Lucian's gaze flickered down briefly, then forward again. "It is not supposed to exist," he said. The answer did not help. Emily let out a small breath, frustration mixing with fear. "That is not an answer," she said. This time, there was a pause. A real one. His steps slowed just slightly, enough that the silence between them stretched longer than before. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Not softer, more deliberate. "That mark," he said, "is a recognition seal. It responds only to those who carry a direct claim to the crown." Emily felt her stomach drop. Claim. The word again. It followed her, heavy and unavoidable. "I do not carry anything like that," she said quickly. "I would know." Lucian stopped walking. The sudden stillness pulled her to a halt with him, the connection between them tightening for just a moment before settling again. He turned his head slightly, just enough to look at her directly. "You assume knowledge defines truth," he said. "It does not." The words settled into her chest, unsettling in their certainty. Emily opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out, because a small part of her, buried beneath the confusion and fear, was beginning to question that assumption. The mark pulsed again, deeper this time, and a flicker of something crossed her mind. Not a full vision, just a fragment. A hand placing the ring onto a surface. A voice speaking words she could not understand. A feeling of finality. She inhaled sharply, her fingers tightening slightly at her sides. "I saw something," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Lucian's gaze sharpened instantly. "What did you see?" Emily hesitated, trying to grasp something that already felt like it was slipping away. "A room," she said slowly. "Stone. A table. And a ring." Her voice wavered slightly. It felt like it belonged there. Like I knew it. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Lucian did not move. Did not react immediately. But something in his expression shifted. Subtle. Controlled. Dangerous. "That is not memory," he said quietly. Emily's chest tightened. "Then what is it?" His gaze did not leave hers. "It is inheritance." The words settled into the space between them, heavier than anything else he had said so far. Emily felt it sink in her chest, deep and cold, pressing against everything she thought she knew about herself. Before she could respond, movement appeared at the far, end of the corridor. Two figures stepped into view, silent and precise, their presence unmistakably aligned with Lucian. They stopped several feet away, lowering their heads slightly in acknowledgement. "The chamber is prepared," one of them said. Lucian did not look away from Emily as the space was vast, but not in the way of the ballroom. This was not built for display. It was built for purpose. The walls were carved from dark stone, etched with patterns so faint they almost disappeared unless you looked directly at them. The air felt heavier here, thicker, like it carried weight from something long before her time. At the center of the room stood a raised platform, and on that platform was a single object, the ring. Emily's breath caught. It was the same ring, and yet it was not. This one did not look abandoned or misplaced. It looked anchored, as if this was where it belonged, as if everything that had happened had been leading her here. Lucian's hand did not leave her wrist as they stepped forward, guiding her closer to the platform. The two figures who had been waiting moved silently to the edges of the room, taking their positions without needing instruction. This was not preparation for a test. It felt more like preparation for something inevitable. "This is where it was forged," Lucian said, his voice low, steady, carrying easily through the chamber. Emily's gaze remained fixed on the ring. "Forged for what?" she asked, her voice quieter than before. He did not answer immediately. Instead, his grip shifted slightly, not tightening, but grounding her more firmly as they reached the base of the platform. The mark on her wrist pulsed again, stronger this time, the warmth spreading instantly up her arm and into her chest, reacting to the proximity. She inhaled sharply, her body responding before her mind could catch up. "For inheritance," Lucian said finally. The word settled heavily into the space. Emily swallowed, her eyes flickering from the ring to him. "You keep saying that," she said, "but I do not have anything to inherit." The moment the words left her mouth, the mark pulsed again. Not softly, not gently. It flared. The reaction was immediate. The glow surged beneath her skin, brighter than before, tracing further than it had before, curling upward along her arm with precise intent. Emily gasped, her knees weakening slightly as the sensation deepened, pulling something from within her that she could not control. Lucian did not release her. His grip held steady, anchoring her through the surge, his expression unchanged, but his focus absolute. "You do not decide that," he said quietly. "It does." His gaze shifted briefly toward the ring. Emily followed it, her breath catching again as she realized something that made her chest tighten. The ring was reacting too, not glowing, not moving, but something about it had changed. The air around it felt charged, as if it recognized her presence just as strongly as the mark recognized it. "This chamber was sealed after the last succession," Lucian continued. "No one has stood here since." Emily's heart pounded harder. "Then why am I here now?" The question came out almost as a whisper. He did not look at her this time when he answered. His eyes remained on the ring. "Because it answered you." The words settled into her chest, heavy and undeniable. The mark pulsed again, slower this time, deeper, as if aligning itself with something beyond her understanding. A sudden pressure built in the room, subtle at first, then unmistakable. The air thickened, the shadows along the walls shifting slightly, responding to something unseen. Emily's fingers twitched at her sides as another fragment pushed into her mind. Not a full vision, a memory, a voice speaking in a language she did not know, yet somehow understood. A hand placing the ring onto that very platform. A promise being made. A promise being bound. Her breath caught, her eyes widening slightly as the sensation hit deeper this time. "I have been here," she whispered. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Lucian's gaze snapped back to her instantly. "No," he said. "You have not." Emily shook her head slightly, her expression tightening as she tried to hold onto the fragment before it disappeared. "Not like this," she said, "but it feels the same." The silence that followed was heavier than anything before it. Lucian studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable, but something beneath it had shifted again. Something more certain, more dangerous. "Then we confirm it," he said. The statement was not a question. It was a decision. Emily's pulse spiked. Confirm what? His grip adjusted, guiding her one step closer to the platform. The mark on her wrist flared instantly, the reaction stronger than anything before, the warmth turning into something deeper, something that felt like it was pulling her forward whether she wanted it or not. Lucian's voice dropped lower, quieter, but carrying more weight than anything else he had said. So far, whether the ring recognizes you, he said, or remembers you. The difference settled into her chest like a warning. Recognize, or remember. Emily's breath slowed despite herself, her body responding to something she could not explain as she took another step forward. The chamber seemed to shift around her, the air tightening, the silence deepening as if the entire space was waiting. Waiting for her. The mark pulsed once more, steady and certain, as if it already knew the answer. And for the first time since this began, Emily felt something rise beneath the fear. Not confidence, not understanding, something quieter, something older, as if whatever she was about to face had been waiting for her to return. The moment her foot touched the edge of the platform, the chamber reacted. Not violently, not visibly, but undeniably. The air shifted, tightening around her like something unseen had just awakened. Emily froze, her breath catching as the warmth beneath her skin surged again, stronger than before, deeper, pulling from somewhere inside her that she did not recognize. The mark on her wrist flared with a steady, controlled light, no longer flickering, no longer uncertain. It knew where it was. It knew what was happening. Lucian did not release her. His hand remained firm, grounding, but there was no hesitation left in him now. Only focus. Only certainty. Do not resist it, he said quietly. The instruction was not forceful. It was precise. Emily swallowed, her eyes fixed on the ring resting at the center of the platform. It looked unchanged, silent, still, and yet everything around it felt charged, as if the entire chamber revolved around that single object. Her pulse pounded in her ears, her thoughts racing, her instincts screaming at her to step back, to break whatever invisible pull was drawing her forward. But her body did not move away. It moved closer, one step, then another. Lucian's grip adjusted with her movement, guiding but not forcing, allowing her to move at her own pace while never letting the connection between them break. The mark pulsed again, and this time the sensation was different. It was not heat. It was recognition. Something inside her responded, rising to meet whatever the ring represented, aligning with it in a way that made her chest tighten. I do not understand this, she whispered. Lucian's voice came immediately, low and steady. You do not need to understand it. The words should have unsettled her more. Instead, they grounded her in a way she could not explain. The chamber grew quieter, the silence deepening as if even the air was waiting. The two figures at the edges of the room had not moved, had not spoken. They were watching, witnessing. Emily took another step forward. She was close enough now that she could see the details of the ring clearly. The surface was not smooth. It was etched, carved with patterns that seemed to shift if she looked at them too long, as if they were not meant to be fully understood by the eye alone. Her hand lifted slightly, not fully, not intentionally, but enough that the distance between her and the ring began to close. The mark on her wrist reacted instantly. The glow deepened, spreading further up her arm, threading into her shoulder, her chest, her breath catching as the sensation intensified. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, from something else. Anticipation. The realization sent a sharp wave through her chest. This was not just happening to her. Some part of her was responding to it. Lucian felt it. She knew he did. His grip tightened just enough to anchor her, his presence unwavering behind her as she moved forward. If it rejects you, he said quietly, step back. Emily's breath hitched. And if it does not? There was a pause, a brief one. Then his voice came again, lower than before. Then you do not step back. The meaning settled into her chest with quiet finality. She did not respond. She could not, because the distance was gone. Her hand hovered inches above the ring, the glow beneath her skin steady and certain, the air around her thick with something she could not name. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Emily closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, just enough to steady herself, just enough to silence the part of her that was still trying to make sense of this. Then she moved. Her fingers lowered. The moment her skin brushed the surface of the ring, the world shattered. Not outwardly, not physically, but inside her. The connection snapped into place with a force that stole the air from her lungs. The mark on her wrist flared violently, the glow surging up her arm, across her chest, into her throat as a flood of something not her own tore through her mind. Images, voices, not fragments this time, not distant echoes. Clear, immediate, a throne room filled with shadow, a crown placed upon a head she could not see but somehow knew was hers, a voice speaking words that felt carved into her bones, a vow, a binding, a promise that could not be broken. Emily gasped, her body arching slightly as the force of it hit her fully, her fingers tightening instinctively against the ring as if letting go was no longer an option. The chamber reacted. The air shifted violently, the shadows along the walls bending, stretching, responding to the surge of power that had just been awakened. The two figures at the edges of the room dropped to one knee instantly, their movements automatic, reverent, as if recognizing something far beyond what they had expected. Lucian did not move, but his grip tightened sharply, holding her steady as the force surged through her, his gaze locked on her with an intensity that had lost all trace of uncertainty. "Emily," he said, her name cutting through the chaos with absolute clarity. Her eyes snapped open, her breath uneven, her chest rising sharply as the last of the vision tore through her mind. The glow beneath her skin did not fade. It deepened, stabilized, locked into place. Her fingers remained against the ring, but it no longer felt foreign. It felt right. The realization hit her all at once, heavy and undeniable. This was not something she had triggered. This was something she had returned to. Lucian's voice dropped, quieter now, but far more dangerous than before. "It does not just recognize you," he said slowly. His eyes did not leave hers. "It remembers you." The words settled into the chamber like a final truth. And Emily, standing there with her hand on the ring and something ancient waking inside her, realized that whatever she had been before this moment no longer mattered. The world did not return to normal when the light settled. It changed shape. Emily stood frozen, her fingers still resting against the ring, but the force that had surged through her was no longer violent. It had become something quieter, something deeper. The glow beneath her skin no longer flared or pulsed unpredictably. It moved with her breath now, steady, synchronized, as if it had always been there and was only now allowed to exist fully. The chamber no longer felt heavy. It felt aligned, as if something long out of place had finally returned to where it belonged. Emily's chest rose slowly, her breath uneven at first, then steadier as the last fragments of the vision settled into something she could hold on to. Not clear memories, not yet, but impressions that refused to fade. A throne beneath her hands, a voice speaking her name in a tone she had never heard before but somehow recognized. A promise, not made to her, made by her. Her fingers twitched slightly against the ring. It did not resist her touch. It did not react violently. It accepted it. The realization settled into her chest with quiet weight. This was not something she had activated. This was something that had been waiting. Lucian's hand remained at her wrist, but the tension in his grip had changed. It was no longer bracing against the unknown. It was steady, grounded, certain. "Breathe," he said quietly. The word cut through the lingering haze, pulling her back into the present. Emily inhaled slowly, her lungs filling fully for the first time since she had stepped into the chamber. The air felt different now, cleaner, sharper. She did not know how that was possible, but she felt it. Her gaze lifted slightly, moving from the ring to the space around her. The shadows along the walls had settled. The faint patterns carved into the stone seemed more visible now, as if something within the chamber had awakened alongside her. At the edges of the room, The two figures remained kneeling, their heads lowered, their stillness absolute. Not fear, not hesitation, recognition. The weight of that realization pressed against her chest. They were not reacting to what had happened. They were responding to what she had become. Emily's breath faltered slightly at the thought. She pulled her hand back from the ring, slowly this time, deliberately. The moment her skin left its surface, the connection did not break. It remained, subtle, constant, as if the distance no longer mattered. Her fingers curled slightly at her side, her gaze dropping to the mark on her wrist again. It was no longer just a glow beneath the skin. The lines were clearer now, defined, intricate, forming a pattern that felt less like a symbol and more like a signature. Something personal, something claimed. It is stable, one of the figures at the edge of the room said quietly, his voice low but unmistakably different from before. There was no doubt in it. No hositashchen, only confirmation. Lucian's gaze remained fixed on Emily, his expression unreadable, but the intensity behind it sharper than ever. It is more than stable, he said. It is complete. The words settled into the chamber with quiet finality. Complete. Emily felt it echo inside her, not as a concept, but as a sensation. Something that had been missing was no longer missing. She did not understand what it was, but she could feel the difference. It terrified her. It grounded her. It did both at once. What happens now? She asked, her voice quieter than before, stripped of resistance, but not of uncertainty. Lucian did not answer immediately. His gaze shifted briefly to the ring, then back to her, as if measuring something beyond what she could see. When he spoke, his voice was lower, more deliberate. Now, he said, they will come. The words landed heavier than anything else had so far. Emily's chest tightened slightly. Who? She asked. Lucian did not look away from her. Those who will not accept what has just happened, he said. The calm certainty in his voice made the meaning clear. This was not over. This was the beginning of something far larger than the chamber, far larger than the room she had left behind. Emily felt the truth of that settle into her bones, heavy and unavoidable. The mark on her wrist pulsed once, slow and deliberate, as if acknowledging the shift, as if preparing. Lucian's hand finally moved from her wrist, but not to release her. It shifted to her shoulder instead, steady and grounding, anchoring her in place as he turned slightly, his attention moving toward the entrance of the chamber. The air changed again, not violently, not suddenly, but enough that Emily felt it immediately. A presence approaching, not one, more than one. The faint sound of footsteps echoed from beyond the corridor, controlled, measured, deliberate, not hurried, not uncertain, purposeful. Emily's breath slowed despite the tension building again, her body responding in a way that surprised her. The fear was still there, but it was different now, quieter, sharper, as if something inside her was no longer reacting. It was preparing. The mark on her wrist glowed softly, steady and unyielding as the footsteps grew closer. And for the first time since this began, Emily realized something that settled into her chest with quiet certainty. Whatever was coming, she was no longer just the one being judged. She was the reason they had come. The footsteps did not rush. They did not hesitate. They arrived with the same controlled certainty that had defined everything in this world since Emily had stepped into it. The chamber doors opened slowly, not forced, not dramatic, but deliberate, revealing the figures beyond. They entered without permission because they did not need it. Power recognized power, and what stood in that chamber had just shifted that balance. Emily felt the change the moment they crossed the threshold. The air tightened again, but this time it did not press against her. It moved around her, as if adjusting, as if acknowledging something new. The mark on her wrist pulsed once, steady and calm, no longer reacting with uncertainty. It was responding with awareness. Lucian did not step forward. He did not speak. His hand remained at her shoulder, firm and grounded, but there was no tension in it. Only presence. Only certainty. The figures who entered stopped several feet away, their attention fixed entirely on Emily. Not on Lucian. Not on the ring. On her. The woman from before stood at the center, her expression no longer sharpened with challenge, but measured with something far more dangerous. Acceptance forced by truth. "It is complete," she said quietly. No one argued. No one questioned. The chamber itself had already confirmed it. Emily felt the weight of those words settle over her, but they did not crush her the way they would have before. Something inside her had shifted. Not understanding. Not fully. But alignment. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. It existed alongside something else. Something steadier. The older figure stepped forward slightly, his gaze fixed on the mark at her wrist, then lifting to meet her eyes. "Then the succession has returned," he said. The word succession echoed differently now. Not as a threat, as a fact. Emily's breath slowed, her chest rising evenly as the realization settled deeper into her. This was not a mistake. This was not something that would be undone. This was something that had already been decided long before she ever walked into that room as a waitress trying to survive another shift. Lucian's voice came next, quiet but absolute. "Kneel." The command was not directed at her. It was directed at them. For a fraction of a second, the chamber held its breath again. Then it happened. One by one, without hesitation, without resistance, every figure in that room lowered themselves. Not slowly, not reluctantly, instantly, controlled, final. The sound was not loud. It was the soft shift of fabric, the quiet contact of knee to stone. But it carried more weight than anything else that had happened that night. Emily stood frozen, her pulse steady now, her breath even, her gaze moving across the room as she watched it happen. They were not kneeling to Lucian. They were kneeling to what the ring had confirmed, to what stood at the center of that chamber. To her, the realization hit her, not like a shock, but like something settling into place. Something that had always been there, waiting beneath everything she thought she knew about herself. Her fingers moved slightly, not in fear, not in hesitation, but in awareness, the mark on her wrist glowing softly in response. Lucian's hand remained at her shoulder, but it was no longer guiding her. It was standing beside her. The difference was clear. He was not holding her in place. He was acknowledging her position. Emily inhaled slowly, her gaze lifting, her posture straightening without conscious effort, as something deeper within her aligned fully with the moment. She did not understand all of it. She did not know the history, the rules, the consequences, but she understood this. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer small. She was no longer the girl trying to survive on tips and quiet endurance. She was something they recognized, something they could not ignore, something they could not undo. The chamber remained silent, every figure still kneeling, waiting, not for permission, for acknowledgement. Emily looked down at them, her expression no longer uncertain, no longer searching. Something in her had settled, something ancient and quiet and unbreakable. When she finally spoke, her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. "Stand," she said. The word carried through the chamber with quiet authority, clear and certain. And they obeyed. Instantly. Completely. The moment they rose, the balance of the room did not shift back. It held. It remained centered on her. Lucian's gaze met hers for a brief moment, something unreadable passing between them, not as ruler and subject, but as something far more complicated. Then the chamber stilled again, not with tension, with recognition. And Emily Carter, who had once been nothing more than a waitress trying to make it through another night, stood at the center of a world that had been waiting for her return all along.